Now, yesterday I spoke to a man called Dodd. His brother Graham was a victim of the infected blood scandal and died in the early 1990s. I asked Jeff to come on again because Jeff was one of the people who gave evidence to the inquiry. I read some of it yesterday, and also will have been digesting what has been going on. So Jeff joins me again. I'm delighted that he's agreed to do so. And Jeff, just tell me about what has gone on in the last 24 hours or so since we last spoke.
Hi there. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
It's great to be back again. I am just absolutely overwhelmed by the scale of the report. There are 7 volumes. The first volume is a summary of the findings and recommendations, and that runs to over 300 pages. And it is just soul-destroying, as I said yesterday again. It is soul-destroying reading through that documentation, to read about the scale of the cover-ups, to read about the scale of the errors.
He says soul-destroying, and I'm absolutely sure you're right, but is it shocking in any way, or is this just confirmation of what you have known for years, for decades, Jeff?
We've known this for years, but it's the scale of the stories that you read, the human stories, the people's pictures that you see outside the hall where the protesters are today, or the victims' relatives are today. This is just off the scale in terms of the impact, the human impact that it's had. And the one thing I would like to just say is that it is a shame that there is nothing within the scope of the inquiry to make any recommendations for any prosecutions. So although there is a litany of errors and cover-ups within that documentation, there is nothing detailed in terms of recommendations about what should happen to those people that made those heinous errors.
What do you think should happen, Jeff? You presumably want criminal prosecutions?
Of course I do, yeah. I mean, in France, the health minister went to prison. We saw evidence from various people during the inquiry. So, for example, Lord Ken Clarke, who was a health minister, he thought Factor VIII was given by a pill, not by an injection.
This is just. I know you know what it is, and I know what it is. But Factor VIII was really at the heart of all of this. This was the agent that was allowing, correct me if I'm wrong, but haemophiliac's blood to clot because it doesn't clot. That's the point. And your brother Graham was given Factor VIII, wasn't he?
That's right. And I think that one of the things that has come out today, and so many people have mentioned it, is that it was given out almost as sweets. The slightest little bump or bang, it was recommended that he had Factor VIII. Now, the doctors knew that there was a risk of infection from this Factor VIII, and that risk of infection far outweighed, in lots of circumstances, the injury that this Factor VIII was treating, that would probably recover, or definitely would recover, without the Factor VIII. Now, Factor VIII should only have been treated or been given in extreme circumstances, in a life-saving situation, because people knew that it was actually contaminated.
And that's the problem here, isn't it, Jeff? That's the problem. We knew, even I was reading today, there was some evidence in 1952 about blood transfusion saying there shouldn't be from more than 20 sources. I mean, it shouldn't have been anyway from nearly as many sources as that. But we had a situation where blood was being imported from America. Often people were being paid for that blood. They were often people who were drug addicts and people who were at high risk of things like hepatitis C and HIV, and that was given to people like your brother. And the risks were sometimes known as well. I mean, just tell me the effect that this has had on your life and over such a long time, Jeff.
So Graham passed away in '93. He was only 27 years old. I had my first daughter just the year before. He was her godfather. Obviously, only knew her for a year. We've now got a granddaughter. My second daughter's also just got married. We've missed out on huge amounts of family time. My parents are 93 and 90, and my father hasn't been out of the house for 6 months. He's desperately ill, and they suffer every day. We've suffered every single day, all of us as a family. But the one thing I want to say, and I said it yesterday and I'll repeat it again, Graham was by far the bravest person in the family in facing up to this. He was an inspiration to all of us in how he coped, how he came to terms with what was inevitable, and how he faced up to that with as much positivity as he could. And he made the most of what was a very short life and crammed into that very short life a lot more than many of us do in a far longer life. And it was a benefit to be his brother, to be honest. But 30 years later, because we're not as brave as him, we struggle. We struggle, and particularly on days like this. I saw Sir Brian Langstaff talking at 2 o'clock this afternoon, and I was in tears. It was just so emotional hearing what he had to say.
Do you think
seeing
he's done
all those
a good
other
job?
people in the room? I think he's done an amazing job, and it's taken far longer than I would have hoped, but he's been as thorough as he could have been, and the way he spoke to all of the people today was inspirational. There were a couple of things though that I find just so tragic, and the fact that Rishi Sunak's going to come out today and he's going to make some sort of apology.
Yeah, that's in about an hour's time. We're going to bring that to you live here on Talk. Yeah. What do you?
But every single representative of the government and even civil servants who've been involved in this scandal should also be making personal apologies. And I remember, and I'm not a supporter of the SNP by any stretch of the imagination, but when the Horizon scandal erupted, Stephen Flynn, the leader of the SNP in the House of Commons, made a comment at PMQs, and I'll read it if you don't mind.
Go
he
ahead.
said, when the public come knocking on the doors of this house, of this here chamber, seeking justice, the government only ever answers when it has no options left. The public are angry at Westminster because they know this place never really changes. I think that is an indictment of how awful the government approach has been over the years. And even 6 months ago, as I said yesterday, the Conservative government called a 3-line whip to vote against an amendment put forward by Diana Johnson to the Victim and Prisoners Bill. But now suddenly they're saying, "Oh, we're really sorry." But
what is your hope now for compensation, Jeff?
I think again, it needs to be done quickly. Every 4 days, somebody affected or infected by this scandal is dying. I think he said, Sir Brian mentioned that 600 people have died since the inquiry started. Somebody who gave evidence on the first day died 5 weeks ago. They've got to do something quickly. I've got no great hope that they will, but they have to do something quickly because time marches on. But it's not just about compensation. For me, people who have been responsible for this, who have played God as a clinician, who have hidden things up as a civil servant or as a government minister, they've got to be held accountable. That's got to happen, and there's got to be something announced very quickly, not just about compensation, because the inquiry, the scope of the inquiry did not cover any prosecution. There has to be something to follow up very quickly that covers that area of it, that element of it, and people have got to be held accountable.
Jeff, I'm going to ask you one more time to come on tomorrow, actually, if that's okay, because we're hearing the announcement in the morning is going to come in regard to compensation. There'll be more detail there, and I want your reaction to that, because I've been fascinated. I've actually been engrossed in this interview today and yesterday, and I want to hear from you tomorrow because there will be more detail emerging, and maybe your reaction to Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer in terms of what they say. Will you come on tomorrow?
Of course I would. I'd love to. And just so quickly, can I just, this is Graham, and I think it's important that people realise that for every tragedy, there is a human story behind.
Absolutely. I tell you what, we have a lot of people listening on the radio, and you're just holding up the picture now. We broadcast, as you know, on the TV and the radio. Would you send me a picture of that photograph, send it to our producer, and I will tweet it out, and I will make sure that people know the face of Graham Dodd, the man who was affected by this. And I want you to know as well, Jeff, you said that Graham was a very brave man. I think you're a very brave person too. And I want to thank you for speaking today, and we'll talk tomorrow when there are more details of this. Thank you very much indeed. That's Jeff Dodd, and his brother. Thank you. And his brother Graham was a victim of the infected blood scandal.